In the smoldering ashes of the Third Reich, as the world awoke from the nightmare of World War II, the architects of unparalleled horror faced their reckoning. But for some of Nazi Germany's most notorious leaders, death came not at the hands of justice, but shrouded in mystery, evasion, and intrigue. This is a story of the enigmatic fates that befell Heinrich Himmler, Hermann Göring, Martin Bormann, Heinrich Müller, Josef Mengele, and Rudolf Hess, men who orchestrated genocide, terror, and war on a scale that scarred humanity forever. As Allied forces closed in on Berlin in April 1945, Adolf Hitler barricaded himself in his Führer bunker, issuing frantic orders to his inner circle. The war in Europe ended on May 8, 1945, with Germany's unconditional surrender. Yet, for these high-ranking Nazis, the end was anything but straightforward. Some chose suicide to evade capture. Others fled into the shadows, sparking decades of speculation, manhunt, and conspiracy theories. Were they victims of their own despair or pawns in larger geopolitical games? Did justice truly prevail, or did some escape the noose? Tonight, we delve into historical facts, drawing from declassified documents, eyewitness accounts, and forensic evidence. We'll explore the dramatic circumstances of their deaths, the key figures involved, and the lingering questions that continue to haunt historians. From cyanide capsules and hidden teeth to bodies unearthed decades later, these stories reveal the chaotic aftermath of a regime built on hatred and deception. Join us as we uncover the mysterious deaths of Nazi leaders after the war, a tale of hubris, evasion, and the long shadow of accountability. Fade to archival photos of the Nuremberg trials, with judges and defendants. Music builds tension. To understand the fates of these men, we must first revisit the crumbling edifice of the Nazi Empire. By early 1945, the Third Reich was in freefall. The D-Day landings in June 1944 had opened a second front in the West, while Soviet forces pounded from the east in brutal offensives. Berlin, once the heart of Hitler's Thousand-Year Reich, became a battlefield. Key figures like Heinrich Himmler, the architect of the Holocaust and head of the SS, wielded immense power. Himmler oversaw the concentration camps where millions perished, including the infamous Auschwitz. Hermann Göring, the flamboyant Luftwaffe chief and Hitler's designated successor, had amassed a fortune in looted art. Martin Bormann, the shadowy party chancellery head, controlled access to Hitler himself. Heinrich Müller, the Gestapo chief, enforced terror through secret police operations. Josef Mengele, dubbed the Angel of Death, conducted grotesque medical experiments at Auschwitz. And Rudolf Hess, Hitler's early deputy, had already embarked on his bizarre solo flight to Scotland in 1941, seeking peace negotiations. As defeat loomed, these men grappled with their options: fight to the bitter end, surrender, or flee. Hitler, in his final testament on April 29, 1945, expelled Göring and Himmler for perceived betrayals, Göring for seeking to assume power prematurely, Himmler for secret peace overtures to the Allies. On April 30th, Hitler and his wife Eva Braun committed suicide in the bunker. Joseph Goebbels, the propaganda minister, followed suit the next day, poisoning his 6 children before killing himself and his wife. The immediate post-war period saw the Nuremberg trials, where surviving leaders faced justice. But for our subjects, death intervened in ways that sparked enduring mysteries. The chaos of Berlin's fall, street fighting, mass graves, and desperate escapes created perfect conditions for rumors and vanishings. Ratlins, escape networks often aided by sympathetic Vatican officials or South American regimes, allowed some Nazis to slip away. The Cold War further complicated matters, as East and West vied for intelligence assets. These deaths weren't just personal endings. They symbolized a Reich implosion and the challenges of post-war reckoning. Heinrich Himmler, the bespectacled bureaucrat who engineered the final solution, met his end in a manner befitting his cowardice. As Reichsführer SS, Himmler commanded the Gestapo, Waffen-SS, and the machinery of genocide that claimed 6 million Jewish lives and millions more. In the war's final weeks, sensing defeat, he attempted to negotiate with the Allies behind Hitler's back, offering to surrender if spared prosecution. On May 21, 1945, just days after Germany's surrender, British troops near Nuremberg captured a suspicious man in civilian clothes. He carried forged papers identifying him as Heinrich Hitzinger. Under interrogation, he revealed himself, "I am Heinrich Himmler." During a routine medical examination the next day, as a doctor inspected his mouth, Himmler bit down on a hidden cyanide capsule. 15 minutes later, the man responsible for unimaginable atrocities was dead at age 44. His body was buried in an unmarked grave on the Nuremberg heath to prevent it becoming a shrine. Eyewitnesses, including British Sergeant Edwin Austen, described the scene. Himmler, stripped for search, revealed no remorse, only a calculated attempt to evade justice. His death closed a chapter, but questions lingered. Had he hidden assets or secrets that died with him? Hermann Göring, the larger-than-life Reichsmarschall, faced justice at Nuremberg. Known for his charisma and decadence, Göring had been Hitler's second-in-command, presiding over the Luftwaffe's failures and looting Europe's art treasures. Captured by American forces in May 1945, he reveled in the spotlight of his trial, defending the Nazi regime with unrepentant bravado. On October 15, 1946, hours before his scheduled execution by hanging, Göring cheated the gallows. Found dead in his cell, he had ingested cyanide smuggled in a vial, possibly hidden in a soap container or passed by a sympathetic guard. The official report cited suicide, but speculation swirled. Did American or German contacts aid him to avoid a humiliating death? His final letter expressed no regret, only loyalty to Hitler. Göring's death shocked the Allies, exposing security lapses at Nuremberg. His cyanide source remains a mystery, fueling theories of internal conspiracies or external aid. Martin Bormann, Hitler's private secretary and the Nazi Party's gatekeeper, vanished in the chaos of Berlin's fall. Last seen on May 1, 1945, attempting to escape the Führer bunker, Bormann's fate became one of history's great mysteries. For decades, rumors place him in South America, living under aliases, protected by ratlins. In 1972, construction workers in Berlin unearthed skeletal remains near the Leute station, where Bormann was last reported. Forensic analysis in 1998, including DNA testing, confirmed the remains as Bormann's. Glass shards in the jaw suggested cyanide poisoning, likely on May 2, 1945, during his escape attempt. Yet, conspiracy theories persisted. Some claimed the body was planted to end manhunts, while others believed Bormann had survived longer, aided by Soviet or Western intelligence. The truth, supported by dental records and DNA, points to suicide amid Berlin's collapse. But the delay in discovery kept Bormann's legend alive for decades. Heinrich Müller, the Gestapo chief, remains the most elusive. Known as Gestapo Müller, he orchestrated arrests, interrogations, and mass deportations. Last seen in the Führer bunker on May 1, 1945, Müller vanished without a trace. Unlike others, no body was ever confirmed, sparking speculation he was recruited by the CIA or KGB during the Cold War. Declassified CIA files reveal Müller was a target of intense searches, with unconfirmed sightings in Argentina, Cuba, and Moscow. A 1963 report claimed he died in Berlin, but no evidence supports this. His wife and children, questioned post-war, offered no clues. Historians like Richard Breitman suggest Müller's intelligence value made him a prime candidate for extraction by Allied or Soviet forces. Müller's fate remains an open question, a ghost in the annals of Nazi history, embodying the era's unresolved mysteries. Josef Mengele, the Angel of Death, escaped to South America via ratlins, living under aliases in Argentina, Paraguay, and Brazil. His gruesome experiments on Auschwitz prisoners, particularly twins, cemented his infamy. After the war, he evaded capture, supported by Nazi sympathizers and lax immigration policies. In 1979, Mengele drowned while swimming off the Brazilian coast, confirmed by a 1985 exhumation and 1992 DNA tests. His death at age 67, living comfortably as Wolfgang Gerhard, outraged survivors and hunters like Simon Wiesenthal. Mengele's journals, later discovered, showed no remorse, only a delusional belief in his scientific legacy. His escape and long survival exposed the failures of post-war justice, as nations prioritized Cold War politics over Nazi hunts. Rudolf Hess, Hitler's deputy until his bizarre 1941 flight to Scotland, spent decades in Spandau Prison after Nuremberg. Sentenced to life, he outlived his peers, becoming a solitary figure. On August 17, 1987, at age 93, Hess was found dead in a prison garden house, an electrical cord around his neck. The official verdict was suicide, but his son, Wolf Hess, claimed murder by British agents to prevent his release. Medical reports confirmed Hess's frailty made suicide plausible, though conspiracy theories persist. His death marked the end of Spandau sole prisoner, closing a chapter of Nazi incarceration. The mysterious deaths of these Nazi leaders reflect the chaotic end of the Third Reich and the complexities of post-war justice. Himmler and Göring chose suicide to evade execution. Bormann likely died fleeing. Müller vanished into history's shadows. Mengele escaped for decades, and Hess lingered as a relic of a bygone era. Each death, whether confirmed or speculative, underscores the challenges of accountability in a fractured world. The Nuremberg trial convicted 24 major Nazis, but many others slipped through ratlins or Cold War intrigues. The hunt for war criminals, led by figures like Simon Wiesenthal, continued for decades, driven by survivors' demands for justice. Yet, the mystery surrounding these deaths remind us that truth is often elusive in the fog of war. As we reflect on these events, we honor the millions who suffered under Nazi tyranny. Their stories compel us to confront the past, ensuring such atrocities never recur. In the smoldering ruins of Berlin, as the flames of World War II died down, the architects of the Third Reich faced their fates in ways that still captivate historians and spark debate. The story of the mysterious deaths of Nazi leaders like Heinrich Himmler, Hermann Göring, Martin Bormann, Heinrich Müller, Josef Mengele, and Rudolf Hess unfolds like a dark tapestry woven with threads of desperation, cunning, and unresolved questions. Their ends, often shrouded in ambiguity, reflect the chaos of a collapsing regime and the challenges of bringing its masterminds to justice. This narrative delves into the historical record, drawing from declassified documents, eyewitness accounts, and forensic evidence to unravel these enigmatic tales. As Allied forces tightened their grip on Germany in 1945, the Nazi Empire crumbled. The D-Day invasion of June 1944 had breached Hitler's fortress Europe, while Soviet armies advanced relentlessly from the east. Berlin, once the proud capital of Hitler's vision, became a war-torn shell, its streets choked with rubble and fear. Key figures like Himmler, the cold architect of the Holocaust, held sway over the SS and the death camps, orchestrating the genocide of millions. Göring, the flamboyant Luftwaffe commander, reveled in stolen art and power. Bormann, the elusive gatekeeper to Hitler, wielded influence from the shadows. Müller, the Gestapo's ruthless chief, enforced terror with chilling efficiency. Mengele, the so-called angel of death, conducted horrific experiments at Auschwitz. Hess, once Hitler's deputy, had already baffled the world with his 1941 flight to Scotland. By April 1945, Hitler, holed up in his Führer bunker, issued frantic orders as defeat loomed. He expelled Göring and Himmler from the party for perceived betrayals, Göring for trying to seize power, Himmler for secretly negotiating with the Allies. On April 30th, Hitler and Eva Braun took their lives, followed by Goebbels and his family. The Nazi hierarchy fractured, and those left faced stark choices: fight, surrender, or flee. The war's end on May 8 brought the Nuremberg trials, but for some, death came before justice could. The chaos of Berlin's fall, street battles, mass graves, desperate escapes, created a fog of uncertainty. Ratlins, escape routes often aided by sympathetic clergy or South American regimes, offered sanctuary to some. The Cold War's dawn added further complexity, with East and West vying for Nazi intelligence. Heinrich Himmler's end came swiftly, yet mysteriously. As head of the SS, he oversaw the machinery of the Holocaust, responsible for millions of deaths. In May 1945, he fled, disguised as a common soldier under the alias Heinrich Hitzinger. On May 21st, British troops near Nuremberg detained a suspicious figure. During interrogation, he revealed his identity: "I am Heinrich Himmler." The next day, during a medical check, he bit into a cyanide capsule hidden in his mouth. Within minutes, the man who orchestrated genocide was dead at 44. His body, buried in an unmarked grave on the Nuremberg Heath, vanished from history to avoid becoming a shrine. Questions linger. Why the sudden suicide? Could he have bargained for leniency? Hermann Göring, the Reich's second man, met a different fate. Captured by American forces, He stood trial at Nuremberg, his charisma undimmed despite his crimes. Convicted of war crimes, he was sentenced to hang on October 16, 1946. But hours before, Göring cheated the gallows, swallowing cyanide smuggled into his cell. How he obtained the poison remains debated. Some point to a sympathetic God, others to hidden reserve from his SS days. His death, defiant to the end, left the Allies grappling with an incomplete reckoning. Martin Bormann's fate is murkier. Hitler's private secretary vanished during Berlin's fall, attempting to flee the bunker. For decades, rumors place him in South America, protected by ratlins. In 1972, construction workers in Berlin unearthed remains near the bunker. Forensic tests in 1998 confirmed they were Bormann's, with cyanide traces suggesting suicide in May 1945. Yet doubts persist. Did he die escaping, or was his body planted to close the case? Heinrich Müller, the Gestapo chief, disappeared entirely. Last seen in the bunker, he left no trace. Speculation ranges from Soviet capture to a new life in Argentina. Josef Mengele evaded capture, living in South America until drowning in Brazil in 1979, his identity confirmed years later. Rudolf Hess, imprisoned after his 1941 flight, died in Spandau Prison in 1987, officially by suicide, though conspiracy theories suggest foul play. These deaths, varied yet interconnected, reveal the tangled aftermath of a regime built on terror, leaving questions that echo through history. As the echoes of gunfire faded and the dust settled over Berlin's shattered streets, the Third Reich's architects met their shadowed ends, each death a fractured mirror reflecting the regime's crumbling illusions of invincibility. From Himmler's frantic bite into a cyanide vial, his bespectacled face twisting in the dim light of a British prison cell, to Göring's final, theatrical swallow of poison that silenced the gallows creak, these moments were not mere closings but thunderclaps in history's storm. Bormann's bones, unearthed from the city's scarred earth, whispered of a desperate dash through flames, while Müller's ghost slipped into the void, forever taunting investigators with his absence. Mengele's waves lapped at a distant shore in Brazil, washing away the stains of Auschwitz's horrors in a drowning too ordinary for such monstrosity, and Hess's noose in Spandau hung like a question mark, fueling whispers of plots that danced just beyond the light. Yet in these enigmatic finales, we glimpse not just the frailty of evil's foot soldiers, but the unyielding march of time's judgment. These men, who once commanded legions and scripted genocides with a stroke of pen, reduce themselves to whispers in the wind. Suicides born of cornered terror, vanishings fueled by networks of complicit shadows. Their stories, pieced together from yellowed documents, grainy photographs, and the trembling testimonies of survivors, remind us that no fortress of ideology can outrun the tide of accountability. The ratlins that snaked through Vatican corridors and across Atlantic swells carried not redemption, but the weight of unpaid debts, burdens that South American sunsets could never bleach away. Imagine, if you will, the quiet vigils of those who endured, the liberated souls from Dachau and Buchenwald, their eyes hollowed by unimaginable voids, now tracing the lines of these fugitives' fates on faded newsprint. For them, closure was a luxury, a threadbare blanket against the chill of memory. The Nuremberg courtroom, with its stark wooden benches and the solemn gavels full, stood as humanity's first courtroom of the soul, where Göring's bravado cracked under the weight of evidence, and where the absent ones loomed larger in their evasion. But justice, we learn, is a mosaic, piece from trials, exhumations, and the slow grind of international hunts that span decades. Today, as we stand on the far side of that cataclysm, these tales pull us deeper into reflections current. What do they teach the curious mind? The student poring over textbooks in the sunlit library, or the wanderer pausing at Berlin's memorial stones? They etch a warning that hatred's architects are often ordinary men, elevated by circumstance and ideology into monsters, only to crumble when the scaffolding of power dissolves. Himmler's meticulously planned extermination camps, Göring's opulent hordes of pilfered masterpieces, these were not feats of genius, but banal corruptions amplified by unchecked ambition. And in their falls, we see the spark of resilience, the Allies' dogged pursuit, the historians' tireless digs through archives, the survivors' voices rising like phoenixes from ash. But let us not end in solemnity alone. Let these stories ignite a fiercer light. Picture the world they sought to forge, a monochrome nightmare of purity enforced by boot and bayonet. shattered by the rainbow of coalitions that toppled it. The Red Army's vengeful surge, the American liberators' stunned horror at camp gates, the British captors' steely resolve in the face of Himmler's unmasking. These were threads of a greater human tapestry, woven from diverse hands united against the dark. In the decades since, we've built upon that foundation, conventions against genocide, museums that echo with the lost, education that armed the young against fascism's seductive lies. As the camera pulls back from Berlin's rebuilt skyline, where glass towers pierce a sky unscarred by flak, we carry these mysteries not as burdens, but as beacons. They compel us to question, in our own time, with echoes of division stirring in digital forums and shadowed alleys, will we recognize the Himmlers in suits, the Görings in boardrooms? The enigmatic ends of these Nazi leaders are not footnotes, but urgent calls to remember without numbing, to pursue justice without weariness, to cherish the fragile web of empathy that binds us. For in the end, history's true victors are not the conquerors of battles, but the guardians of truth, who ensure that such shadows never fully eclipse the dawn. And so, as we fade from these haunted chapters, let the weight of their untold secrets stir in your quiet fire, to learn, to act, to stand unyielding against the night, forever vigilant in the light of what was, what is, and what must never be again.